Hello, I'm Ollie and this is CriminOlly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, 1100 pages of narrative brilliance. This is my review of Centennial by James Michener. Now, this is a fascinating book and a very different kind of book than I normally read. It's 1100 pages long, so a lot longer than the books I normally read. And it also tells its story in a very interesting and different way. So this is a novel, but it's a novel that kind of reads like non-fiction. And it's a book that, rather than really being about characters or plot or anything like that, is about a place. And that place is a small town called Centennial in Colorado in the USA. And when I say it's about a place, I really do mean it's about a place. This book features a lengthy chapter that is just about the formation of that area of the earth, about the geology, about the makeup of the land there and the soil and things like that, about how the rocks formed and the mountains. There's pages and pages dedicated to that. It's a very different kind of novel, and I found it both incredibly compelling to read and also absolutely fascinating. Now, James Michener is someone who was a really, big popular writer in kind of the 60s and 70s in particular, and he wrote a lot of big books like this, many of which were about places. So he also did one called Chesapeake, about that area of the US, and one about Hawaii as well. And it's a book like no other book I've ever read, really, because of that focus on a place rather than characters. Now, there are human characters in this book, and I'll kind of get onto that in a bit, but it's really Centennial itself that is the star. And the name of the town, I think, is really key, because Centennial is so named because at the time of the original Centennial celebration in the US, so when the USA was 100 years old, the town changes its name from what it was before to Centennial to commemorate that. Now, this book came out in the mid-70s, just before the bicentennial celebrations in the States. So that naming of the town is definitely very deliberate. And this is a book that really, whilst it focuses on that particular place, is really about America as a country. And it is fascinatingly done. So there's a framing technique to the book, which is brilliant, which is that this guy who's a historian gets hired by a magazine to go to Centennial and research it and provide a load of research papers about the town. And this is for an article that the magazine is going to publish about the place. And what this book therefore is basically that series of research papers. So you get the opening chapter, which is the historian getting approached to write that book. And then you get the chapter which is like the geology chapter, about the formation of that place. You then get a chapter which is about basically the dinosaurs, so about the animals that lived there before humanity. So lengthy chapter about that. And then you get chapters about the indigenous Americans who lived there, and then the coming of the Europeans and the various people from other countries like China and Japan who lived in the area as well. So all the different people kind of coming together in this place, told sequentially over the decades. And it's really, really interestingly done. And whilst you do get, sometimes you get time jumps and things like that between the chapters, there are definite threads running through it, both in terms of the actual human characters themselves, their kind of family lines and things like that, but also, fascinatingly, in terms of the actual geology of the place. That becomes really, really important as the book progresses. That, the physical nature of Centennial is very much a part of this book. And I've never read a book quite like that before. It does it really, really brilliantly. And at times you get so swept up in the human drama of what is going on that you forget about those bits. And then Michener reminds you of them with events and things like that happen in the book. So it all comes together very, very well. And as I say, whilst the focus is on this one place, as the book progresses, and particularly as it gets towards the end, you realise that, actually this is a book about America. about the land itself, the physical nature of America, the wildness of a lot of the parts of the country, but also about the way that so many different peoples have come together to make America what it is. And that sense of drive, really, that American spirit of, hard work and perseverance to achieve greatness is definitely a big, big part of this book. But that's not to say that the book in any way glosses over some of the more shameful parts of America's history. So there is a lot in here about the terrible treatment of Indigenous Americans by the white settlers, about the slaughter of tribes and things like that. And there are many characters who are interwoven with the European characters in the book, who are Indigenous Americans and from other races as well. So it feels very complete in its assessment of the country and of what makes America the place that it is. I found it really, really fascinating. There is also, I have to say, particularly pleasingly for me as a fan of mysteries, there's a great mystery story kind of buried in the middle of this book that has repercussions in the later parts of the book, which I thought was brilliantly done. A story about the relationship between a sheriff and a young boy, the sheriff suspecting that the young boy has been involved in a crime. And it is just fantastically done. The human drama, as I say, sometimes in this book really comes to the fore. And Michener does a great job of creating really, really interesting characters. And sometimes doing, characters who you only spend a little bit of time with in terms of the scale of the book overall, but whose lives you really get swept up in. I really did think it was a rather wonderful experience. And it made me, I said at the start, I don't often read long books. I tend to read shorter books. But there's something about the experience of sinking into a book as long as this that is a very rewarding thing. You come to, and I certainly came to like this book more and more the more of it I read, the more I settled into its kind of groove of storytelling. And Michener, definitely a really good storyteller and someone who wrote in a really, really engaging and accessible way. So despite the fact this is a huge book and it has like loads of facts in it, basically, it's really, really accessible. It feels, as I say, at times like a popular science book, at times like popular history, but overall it's just a beast of a novel, but one that is very, very satisfying and very rewarding. So those are my thoughts on Centennial by James Michener. Do let me know if you've read it or if you've read other books by him. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.